Dak Prescott and George Pickens went absolutely berserk during the Cowboys' Tuesday practice. We'll tell you what that means for the offense next.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. You can follow him on Twitter at McCoolBCB. And on today's show, we're going to talk about the latest Micah Parsons news, not news, whatever you want to call it. We'll talk about some surprise cuts that could happen in a week. But Landon, let's start with this. The Cowboys had a practice at the Star on Tuesday night. They've returned home, and George Pickens had a huge day, including a big catch down the sideline. You and I were talking before the show. I haven't let myself get excited about the George Pickens trade yet because, first of all, I think they're just going to need him a lot because they're going to throw the ball like crazy. And number two, because of the contract situation that's coming up. But I feel like you're a little bit more optimistic here.
Yeah, and I think it was something that we should feel optimism about. I don't feel like we count our wins enough around here anymore. And wins. I mean, we don't have any wins yet, but I think metaphoric wins. And I think one of the big wins is that it looks like George Pickens is absolutely legit, and it's been absolutely radio silent as far as controversy through training camp. And
I'm knocking on every piece of wood that I can find.
Let's keep knocking on it. But I mean, I just feel like there was all this concern about this deal. Everyone was like, man, I love the fit. Schematically, incredible. The way it's going to work on the field, they need a big body X who can be isolated and get vertical. That's what Dak loves to play with. It really helps open up the offense. I love the fit, but we all know that Pickens is going to burn the building down. And look, obviously we haven't even played any games yet, and I shouldn't be victory dancing this, but I'm saying up to this point, it's been like beyond quiet with him. And the only time we are seeing him is when he's flashing huge plays in practice like this. And I think the other part of it too is opening things up for CeeDee Lamb, who's also had another big day at practice today. So, we talk about a lot of things that ultimately at the end of the day, we really like to kind of focus down on the minutia around here in the Locked On Cowboys podcast. And I think that's important. I think the minor stuff is important, but I also think it's important to take a step back and look at the big picture and talk about the most consequential and most important part of not the offense, of the team. And I think it's Dak Prescott in the passing attack, and I think that they're going to be really good this year.
Yeah, so pulling the curtains back a little bit, our boss David Locke, he always encourages us to play the hits, right? Like talk about your big time players and when they're performing well. And you're right, we probably don't do that enough. It sounds like from all the reports that Pickens had a good start to camp, but things have really started to pick up over the last couple of weeks. I don't know if that's just because he's been more comfortable in the offense. Dak's more comfortable throwing him the ball. But now we're starting to see, and thanks to DallasCowboys.com for tweeting out the picture or the video, you're starting to see those big plays where he's making these circus catches and he's taking the top off the defense. If the Cowboys offense is going to reach that next level where they can single-handedly win them games, that's what they're going to need. They're going to need that version of George Pickens to become a superstar.
Yeah, and I think what we've seen out there so far is that he kind of lives up to what they're looking for. A circus catches on the outside, a guy who is a threat to kind of leave out in isolation. What we wanted was a guy that just kind of helped open up this offense in a lot of different ways, because it felt like everything was too close to the line of scrimmage. Everything, the defenses were bringing their safeties up because they didn't have the threat, except for CeeDee Lamb. They would stack, coverage guys over on CeeDee Lamb's direction, and they dare the Cowboys to beat someone in the isolation on the backside of a formation. And guess what? The Cowboys weren't doing it. They weren't able to do it. I think now what this does is it not, it opens up things up for CeeDee Lamb. Obviously, you have to shift coverage his direction, but also it opens things up for the run game because it stretches the defense vertically. And if you see, the play, it's 30, 40 yards down the field that, he's making a circus catch down the sideline. And again, anytime a safety sees that and the cornerback was in pretty decent coverage, it didn't look like Booth got toasted. He was right there when Pickens made the catch. I think if I'm a safety, I'm looking at, I'm thinking twice every time I take a step towards the line of scrimmage of Pickens kind of making catches over my head.
Yeah, as soon as that play happened, I actually went and looked at like the Philadelphia's depth chart, like starting to get ready for week one. It started, went and read some of the Eagles blog stuff, and it seems like Keely Ringo could be the outside corner that's going to be responsible for covering George Pickens. And in my mind, it's like, okay, that's a big athletic corner who struggles to find the ball in the air. That seems like the exact type of guy that George Pickens would feast against. And maybe we'll see it right in week one. Like you'll see George Pickens have a huge day because Philadelphia is going to have no choice but to leave one of their corners one-on-one with George Pickens.
Yeah. And again, I think the way adding to the top kind of knocks everyone down a spot too, it also leaves very little attention for a guy like Jake Ferguson, right? Who, we think is going to be able to attack the seam on these defenses. It just kind of puts everything in, spreads everything out appropriately, and it gives everyone a lot more room to operate schematically underneath and down the field. So I think for guys that have been squeezed at the line of scrimmage because there isn't a way to kind of get these defenses to back off, the Cowboys, if they continue to have a very happy and productive George Pickens, I think that they found something, and George Pickens is a guy that helps open the rest of the offense up for them.
Am I wrong though in feeling the way that I do? Like, even if this works out well for Dallas this year, because he's on a 1-year deal and because his agent is David Mulligetta, who is the agent for Micah Parsons, who we're going to talk about in a second, it just feels like this is going to be a 17-game thing and then it's over. And for whatever reason, like I'm just having a hard time pumping myself up about that. Again, you can tell me, is that just the wrong mentality to have here?
Look, you and I had this conversation offline. I think that this is more about our outlooks, which, listen, we've each earned on a personal level. You've suffered through a lot as a Cowboys fan. I remember the 3 Super Bowls pretty vividly that they won, but I agree. I think that there's, there certainly is reason to be pessimistic about what, the Cowboys having the option to sign Pickens or that going through. But I would also suggest that this is a very different situation. And this, obviously, than the Micah Parsons situation, simply because of the magnitude of the deal that we're talking about. Pickens is pretty well slotted. I think it wouldn't take very long for the two sides to get together and come up with the number that works.
You're not trying to do a record-breaking deal or anything like that. Plus, we should mention he's already been traded, and that, believe it or not, that impacts the value. He was off draft boards back in 2022 when he came out. I just don't think there's going to be the same kind of market yet compared to someone like even Deron Bland. Let's use not Micah Parsons. Yeah. I think Deron Bland might have a much bigger market than someone like George Pickens.
I think we've seen 2 or 3 deals already this year of wide receivers that have signed. I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but we've seen like Higgins Sutton's deal, less than that, I think Higgins is the ceiling for that deal. Sutton sounds right. Like, I think all those deals kind of are good templates for at least a conversation to be started. That's why I'm not as worried about the Pickens situation. Now, if he goes in here and he has 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, maybe he's going to up the price a little. As a wide receiver too, maybe he's going to up the price a little bit, but we'll see.
All right, let's talk about Micah Parsons, the latest news regarding the Cowboys star pass rusher. Will he be with the Cowboys in 2026? We'll discuss that and more next. This episode is brought to you by Yahoo Fantasy. It's the best time of the year. NFL kickoff is almost here, and that means fantasy football season is back in full swing. And this year, Yahoo Fantasy is turning things up with a fantasy football experience like never before. This year, Landon and I are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should too, whether you're a first-timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy football greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days throughout August. And to kick it off, they've just dropped Yahoo Fantasy Guillotine Leagues, a killer new way to play fantasy football on Yahoo, where the lowest scoring team is eliminated each week until there's only one team left standing. And with the new season right around the corner, now is the time to gather up your league mates and give this new mode a try. And if you're still into the classics, you can still play it head-to-head private leagues, or you can join a public league. So stay tuned for more killer announcements and start playing Yahoo Fantasy Football now at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. All right, we got a Micah Parsons update / non-update from close personal friend Adam Schefter. He follows my Twitter. That's all it is. He said on a couple of different radio stations, including the Pat McAfee show, that he thinks a divorce could be imminent between the Dallas Cowboys and Micah Parsons. He believes that right now the plan is for Micah to play on the 5th-year option, which is fully guaranteed, and then for the Cowboys to maybe tag him next offseason with the idea of trading him. Do you buy that?
I certainly buy that. That's what's something that would be said to Adam Schefter to say out loud in front of cameras. Look, I mean, we are, obligated to kind of check in with the Micah Parsons thing every once in a while. We none of us have any news, and that includes Adam Schefter. The news today with Micah Parsons that went around is that Adam Schefter had an idea about them being in the process of divorcing. That was it. There was no update. There was no new news. At this point, I think everything that we're hearing is leverage points by either David Mugalata's team or Jerry Jones's team. And this has been a war of words through the media at this point. And whoever can text Adam Schefter fastest to get on and Pat McAfee and talk about it, that's who they're going to do. I think at this point, it certainly is in the realm of possibility. I think that they're not idly threatening this. I still think that this deal gets done. I do think that the worst case scenario for, if it really is over is, that the Cowboys let him play out his 5th year. They tag him either with the intent of trading him or just having him continue to play out on the tags. I mean, maybe they just decide to tag him twice and then let him go and see how that works. I mean, they don't get anything from him in that situation. And it's obviously not the best case for the Cowboys long term, but maybe that's just where things are headed. I think at this point we just have to sit here and wait and see, like everybody else. But I don't think that my opinion has changed on this situation, because I don't think I've seen anything that's actually happened. There's just been a lot of kind of shots being fired to the media, which happens in all of these negotiations. So
I'm with you. I still think a deal gets done before week 1. Now, does that get done Saturday, like after the preseason game? Does it get done, the Sunday before week 1? I don't know, right? I honestly don't know. But I will say, if we get to week 1 and Micah Parsons has not signed a deal and he's playing in that Philadelphia game, I think the odds of him being on the roster in 2026 go way down, because players do not like playing on the franchise tag. And David Mulligetta, a lot of his clients who have been on the franchise tag have not returned to that team. They like to get moved or whatever, right? I think that's going to become an issue. But ultimately, I still think this deal gets done. I think both sides want to get a deal done. I think there needs to be some kind of meeting where maybe they both concede something. I don't know what that is, but if we get to week 1 and Micah doesn't sign a deal, it's just a colossal failure by both parties, because this should have been done a long time ago.
Yeah. And it's to the point where really, and there's been a lot of comments like, a lot of emphasis on there has been no contact, no. Like this deal, I think once these parties start talking, if they want to get it done, it'll get done in 12 hours. Like,
I just don't know. I agree with you, but I guess I can't wrap my head around, like, why is there no contact? Like,
it's all ego at this point. It's all ego on both sides. Both sides are got their feelings hurt and are dug in on the situation, and there's no deadline on this. Micah Parsons. I mean, you can yell and get mad. Not you, but the general folks can get mad at Jerry Jones and yell at him when he says that Micah Parsons is under contract. But guys, Micah Parsons is under contract. Like, so
Yes.
he really doesn't have to do anything. It's stupid. It's not wise. I agree with you that he should do something. But the truth of the matter is that, deadlines make deals. And there's no deadline here, right? Really? Like, I mean, they wanted to get a deal done. Yeah. Well, I mean, and really, it's not even then. Like, they can continue to negotiate well past that. Even week one is.
But I wonder if there isn't a kind of soft or
self-imposed, maybe?
Well, a little bit like it, and we know this with a lot of players. Like, I think it was Dak Prescott last year who told his agent, like, "Hey, once the season starts, we're good. We're not doing any negotiation because I want to focus on the season." I wonder if that's not going to be the same case here. Like, hey, once we get to week one, we're not even considering an offer because we're in the season mode now.
Yeah, and if they respect that in the sense that they are going to use it as leverage against them to start a negotiation, then maybe that'll work. But I based on the tone of the conversation, I don't know that would. I think at that point, if he doesn't want a deal, they would say he doesn't want a deal. And again, not agreeing with him, I think that's where we are with this. So I don't know. I still tend to think, knowing Jerry, knowing Micah, again, I still do think that these two human beings care for each other. I don't think I'm crazy to suggest that. I think that's why this is so personal. I think that's why that they're so dug in, is because they really do like respect each other on some level. I think at the end of the day, it's going to mean a phone call, a compromise, and Micah Parsons being paid a whole bunch of money.
Real quick, there was a report from Josina Anderson on Tuesday, I believe, that said the Cowboys don't feel like this relationship is beyond repair. They still would like to get a deal done. They're not looking to trade him. They don't feel like a divorce is going to happen. So at least we're hearing from the Cowboys side of things that, like, they don't feel like, they still feel like a deal could get done. And that's ultimately the most important thing. If the Cowboys want to get a deal done, Micah obviously wants to get a deal done. They just need to sit down like grown men and get this thing all hammered out.
It's a delicate balance, man. You want to be clear to the guy, to your guy, hey, we still want you, but you also want to be like super hardline. Hey, we're not budging about what we said, what we agreed on. So look, they're having to serve a whole bunch, all while performing for the public and the media while doing this. Yeah. It's not easy. I don't I mean, no. I'll certainly take the billions of dollars and try it if they want to give me the offer, but I don't envy them at the same time.
I don't even need $1 billion to try it. Like a couple $100 billion is fine. All right, let's talk about some surprise cuts that could happen next week. Brian Schottenheimer said that they are coming. We'll talk about who we think they might be next. This episode is brought to you by Game Time. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to the ball field with friends or family? Maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize that you have to be in the stands. That is exactly where Game Time comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without all of the stress. And with the money that you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. And Game Time makes it all possible. Game Time makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app actually go down the closer that you get to first pitch. And they've got incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a low price guarantee that takes the worry out of buying. I love that I can see exactly what my view is going to look like in the seats in the app before you buy. It's a fantastic feature. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem promo code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. For your second listen, check out the Locked On Fantasy Football podcast with Vinny Iyer and Michelle Majuk. Listen every day to prep for your fantasy draft and become the most informed manager so you can take home your league's trophy this season. Find Locked On Fantasy Football on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcasts. All right, Landon. Brian Schottenheimer mentioned that some surprise cuts are happening next week. What do you think? Who do you think could be potentially on the outside looking in?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting trying to decipher the word surprise, right? Because I think we all have our own different definition of that. I'm going to throw out a name here that I think is a guy that's playing at a position that has done really well for itself. It feels like this offseason we've heard a lot of names kind of pop this year. And the name is Kenneth Murray, and the position is linebacker, right? Because I think that we've seen a lot of the younger guys, I mean, specifically Shamar James, have a really good training camp. And that doesn't necessarily mean that Murray, who you kind of signed to be a starter, would be off the roster. But the fact is that you're also hearing Leofau play well, and you're also obviously Parsons, not Parsons,
Damone Clark is playing better.
Yeah, Damone Clark is playing
Shamar
better.
James.
Sanborn is what I was trying to say. Sanborn, who you signed, is obviously going to be one of your starters. So it's just that you had all these guys that have popped, right? And so you look at Murray, you look at his cap number this year, and you just wonder, like, we talked about it when we signed him. We kind of know who Kenneth Murray is. So I don't think his absence, with what was going on, really kind of prevented us from getting an idea of what we got from Kenneth Murray. I think it's pretty clear what we're getting. So my question is, like, is Kenneth Murray like $6 million? You've got the number $6 million better than the other guys we've seen on this roster. So
the Cowboys have already paid him $1 million in a roster bonus. But if they cut him, they can save $6 million, which is interesting because I was kind of thinking, like, could they potentially cut him, let him hit waivers? Nobody's going to claim him at $6 million for a single year. I don't see that happening. And then maybe try to get him back on a reduced number if he wants to come back. And maybe if he doesn't want to come back, you say, okay, that's fine. We're rolling with Sanborn, Leofau, Shamar James, Damone Clark. And then maybe that's how you sneak someone like, Justin Barron on the roster for special team stuff.
I'll tell you what, I mean, when I was doing, like, I would think I mentioned it yesterday, I did like a initial run through of getting the kind of core guys that I knew were going to be on the team, right? And this is a little bit what inspired this segment. And I didn't put Murray on there because I just felt like, look, I just haven't seen anything that's like, man, I really feel like, I mean, maybe the problem is I didn't see that in the first place that made me feel like, man, I really need Kenneth Murray in this linebacker room. I think the idea of having a veteran presence obviously is something that was appealing to them, but I also think that they just weren't going to be aware that they were going to have so many of these, second and third year linebackers that were going to pop, and then also to consider Overshown coming back at some point, maybe ahead of where you even thought he was coming back.
Two more surprise cuts that I want to mention. We'll start with Mazi Smith. There's been a lot of beat reporters that have been suggesting that maybe he doesn't make the 53-man roster. And I get it. Like, he's not looked great in the preseason. It's not a strong fit for him in Matt Eberflus's defense, but it would cost you cap space to cut him. And the problem is, if you cut him, it doesn't solve your defensive tackle issues. It just creates another hole. So I think it's more likely they trade him. They could save some space that way, but I don't think he's been so bad that he has to be off the roster.
Yeah, I mean, worst comes to worst, you reduce his role. I mean, you just try to limit the, impact of his up and down play by just having him play fewer plays and hope that it just kind of stabilizes itself as a rotational role, and then you can just get something out of him before his contract expires and you say you part ways. But yeah, I think at this point right now, I think it's clear you haven't gotten what you need out of the player. I think cutting him, is just going to hurt you more than it's going to help you. I think you just have to work around that situation.
Because even if he was just a 15 to 20 snap player, you don't even have one of those on your roster right now, really, outside of Mazi Smith. So I would rather just have him on the team than getting rid of him. One last one that I wanted to mention. Is there a chance that they only keep two running backs like Javonte Williams, Jaden Blue? They keep Hunter Lipke as the guy that can do a little bit of everything. They cut Miles Sanders, and then they just bring up a running back from the practice squad whenever they need one?
Yeah, I mean, I think with the change in the rules of the practice squad, call-ups, I think it's just opened a lot of different situations up. And you have to think that running back is going to be one of these situations where that's going to happen, especially for teams that don't necessarily have a set bell cow that are kind of using a rotational system. It's going to be a good place to kind of stash middle class running backs where they're a dime a dozen. There's 25 of them on the street at any given time. If you kind of have your guy on your practice squad who knows your system,
or two of them,
at least. Yeah,
maybe
I'm saying generally speaking.
Yeah, right. Maybe it's Phil Maffa and Deuce Vaughn on your practice squad, or Miles Sanders and Phil Maffa, and you just bring them up when needed.
That's right. And I think they each have a certain amount of games that you can do so. So you just, I think you've had 6 one and 6 the other, and you almost got a full season out of it. So I think that's how you probably want to handle the true running back 3 on your game day roster, because the truth of the matter is, like we've talked about all training camp, and I've been reporting, they're going to give snaps to Lipke, they're going to give snaps to Turpin, like guys like CeeDee Lamb's going to take some reverses. He may line up in the backfield like he did last year. There's going to be some kind of unconventional carries going on, so they may not need a traditional running back 3 on their full-time 53-man roster.
And maybe Turpin and Lipke don't, they're not RB3, but they get a combined 7 touches a game.
Yeah.
And that's enough just to supplement what they have between Blue and Javonte Williams. And it gets you through games. And now it allows you to go deeper on the offensive line, or deeper in the secondary, or maybe keep an extra linebacker, or keep someone like James Houston, who continues to produce in camp.
Yeah, or it makes you flexible if a better running back situation comes in down the line, but you want to kind of keep the guys that you've got. You can just add them to the top, and now you can have deal with the situation as injuries happen. I think it just becomes more flexible later.
Yeah, maybe add someone like, I don't know, Brian Robinson, who looks like he's going to get cut by the Washington Commanders. Maybe he's just better than anything you have. You have a spot on your roster. We'll see. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen every single day. Download the podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We are free and available on all platforms. He is Landon McCool. I am Marcus Mosher. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.